Is it time to sell high on the king? Welcome to the All.In Fantasy Basketball podcast. This is part two of our segment. And in this segment, we're just going to talk more, less factual, more opinion based stuff about some guys that we think you should maybe sell high on, or if you don't have them, you can try to buy low. Um, or also some trade rumors that have been going around. Trade deadline is coming up sometime after the All Star break, so these guys are going to be some guys you might want to look into picking up or stashing away for now. So we have Randy here on my left, and yeah, my left here. I think it's
Hey,
also your guys' left. Um, Myself, Dan, and Max could not join us for the second half, but that's okay. He'll be here for next week's segment. So the first guy we're talking about, LeBron James, the King. He's been playing really well recently in January. 25.1 points, 7.5 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.4 steals per game, shooting 56% from the field, and only with that much productivity, only giving you 2.6 turnovers. So if you're playing a nine category league, that's pretty solid. Um, Playing out of his mind like this, Randy, what do you think in terms of keeping a guy like LeBron James, or is he somebody that you want to maybe sell high for and get two uh, nice contributing players from somebody else?
I think he's been playing at this level for a while. I think in January he averaged 25 points, very very similar peripheral stats. I think the big difference between February and January, in January he was averaging 25. In December he was averaging 25 as well. The big difference between December and January is how many more threes he shot.
Hmm.
He's averaging two threes a game this month. In December, he was barely averaging one. So that part of his game, the three shooting, comes and goes. I think that's the difference of making him the elite fantasy contributor right now. Going forward, I don't think he's going to average two threes a game. So from that standpoint, he is at an all-time high.
Hmm.
But in terms of productivity, he hasn't really changed. He's still giving you 25 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, with blocks and steals. Doing this with good field goal percentages, over 50% most likely. So if you can get back two people that are very, very productive, then I say trade the King. But I don't see him like dropping down to irrelevance or deviating from what he's averaging now because he's been doing it all season.
Right. I think if you're one of the teams that are maybe in the middle of your league, maybe you're sitting around fourth or fifth or sixth in your league, and you need some sort of an extra push to get you over to one of those top tier teams in your fantasy league. Um, I think trading one guy away for multiple producers is going to benefit your team. Whereas maybe if you're sitting at the top three and you have a LeBron James, your team is probably deep enough that you don't need to add more depth to your team. You can keep LeBron James, let him sit there, and keep providing for you. But otherwise, if you need some extra help on your starting lineup, I would say trade him away, get more production.
And one more point I want to add is, do you believe that Cleveland will shut LeBron down later on in the season, or even reduce his minutes to get him ready for the playoffs?
Um, that's definitely something that you want to consider as well. But seeing as how they did it last year, they didn't really cut a lot of his time down, to be honest, until like maybe the final 2 weeks of the season, which coincidentally is always going to be the final week, your playoff week, the final championship game. So that's the downside of that. But to get you to the finals, I think he's going to be pretty solid. Um,
I would agree.
mhm. Anthony Davis, a lot of guys picked this guy up for their first overall pick. I think
This
he
guy
did
right
as
here.
well. So he has been underperforming all season long compared to last year. His numbers are down across the board pretty much. Um, if you're on a different team, it's a good time for you to buy low buy low on Anthony Davis, don't you think? Or do you think they're gonna shut him down because they're not in a playoff contention?
I'm looking at the New Orleans Pelicans right now, sitting at 13-26. No, sitting at 8th, Utah, 18-22, with 5 teams between them. So that last playoff spot, they could potentially shoot for him with the trade deadline. But most of the rumors coming out is looking like New Orleans is a selling team, not a buying team. Doesn't look like they're making a push for the playoffs. So there is a threat of shutting down Anthony Davis if these injuries pile on, especially after the All-Star break. But I would consider selling if someone was giving you full value, but I wouldn't sell for the sake of selling because you're afraid that there might be a chance that he might get shut down, because he's not debilitatingly injured. He's just having nagging injuries.
Right.
So he might just get 1 or 2 games off here and there. But in a 4-week game, him sitting out one game is not going to kill you.
Mm-hmm. Now, would you try to push and buy Anthony Davis? Try to make a trade to get him, or do you think you should just leave him and not worth it at this point in time?
I wouldn't trade for him unless you were getting a steep discount.
Okay, so we also have John Wall from the Washington Wizards. In the last 5 games he's played, he's also been balling out of his mind. 24.8 points, 9.8 assists, 5.8 rebounds, 1.6 three-pointers, shooting a really good 49% from the field as a guard. 3.2 steals a game, which is ridiculous as well. The downside to his game is that he's got 4.8 turnovers a game. So that's something that is going to hurt you a lot in a 9 category league. 8 category league, this guy is he's top round value. He had an MRI this week revealing a grade 1 minor strain on his left VMO muscle. I don't even know what the hell that means, but I just know it's not that big of a deal. He's still playing, he's still producing. But his entire team is banged up. Like, everyone's injured on his team. He's a little bit injured. Do you risk keeping a guy like this on your team and continue milking these kind of stats off him, or do you think you want to use this as a bait to get somebody else who is producing steadier and doesn't have a huge risk in getting injured?
I think for me, John Wall is balling way too hard right now. I don't think he can just up. So if you know somebody that loves him some John Wall, I say unload him. Bradley Beal's going to come back and take away some of his shots. Eventually, everyone's going to get healthy. And looking at the Wizards in the playoff scheme, they want to be in the playoffs. They're going to push for the playoffs. And I don't think John Wall shooting 25 times a game is going to get them there. So I think they're going to want to be more efficient. I think they're going to take away some of his shots. And when everyone gets healthy, I just don't think he can produce at this level.
Do you think that there's a risk of him getting more injuries and potentially just devastating your team with another setback? Or do you think,
for all those viewers, I don't own John Wall, so don't worry, he's not going to get hurt.
Okay. So.
But the last 2 seasons, he's played 82 and 79 games. So he doesn't have a history of getting hurt. His rookie season, he missed some games, but the last 2 seasons, he's been good. So I'm not too worried about it in that sense. But I'm just worried about him not being able to keep up with the production. Mm-hmm. And if you can get a lot back for him right now, I say trade him.
Hmm. Yeah, he definitely does play a lot of games. He doesn't sit many out, and I guess the main thing is that he plays through the injuries, and that could be an issue. So hopefully, the injuries don't catch up with him, and he continues to put up some nice numbers. Maybe it'll take a little bit of a dip after the All-Star break, but otherwise, he's really solid right now. I think he's second in the league for assists, something like that. But we have Victor Oladipo, who in the last 7 games has been putting up some really nice numbers as well. Elfrid Payton was injured. He's just come back, but in the time that in the last 7 games at least, Oladipo has been putting up 18.3 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.9 steals on a pretty good field goal percentage as well too. Now the question is, will Elfrid Payton's return hurt his fantasy value, or do you think Oladipo has done enough to earn him the playing time and share the front court with Evan Fournier? Is that his name? Evan Fournier? Something like that. Fournier.
Evan Fournier, that's the shooting guard they have out there.
Right. And I think it's pretty much those 3 guards taking up all the backcourt minutes. Do you think Elfrid Payton is going to come back and retain his starting role, or do you think they're going to let Oladipo play a little bit more since he's doing well right now?
I know I like to look at where the team sits when I talk about stuff like this. So Orlando is in the playoff hunt. They're actually above 500, 20 wins, 19 losses, and if they want to win, I think Victor Oladipo should be in the starting lineup. But with Peyton back, they're gonna have to give him minutes and shots. In my point of view, shots is what makes it, and that's 10 shots that have to go to Peyton, and it's gotta come from Evan or Victor. Just for perspective, Oladipo's been averaging 20 shots with him out. When Peyton was healthy, he was averaging 13 shots. So I imagine somewhere between 13 and 20 shots is where he's going to get. And with that, he's not going to average the insane 18 points that he was providing.
And actually, since you mentioned the Orlando Magic being above 500, actually, a lot of the Eastern teams this year are above 500, especially in the ones that are able to play in the playoffs this year. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can get Randy back in here. Hey, Randy.
Hey, what's up?
Sorry about that. That was my internet that cut out. Technical difficulties again. But so we're talking about the Orlando Magic. They're above 500, and an interesting thing to point out is that there are more teams that are above 500 on the East this year than there are in the West, and that hasn't happened in a long time.
No, it hasn't. We have what is it? We have Utah Jazz at 18 and 22 as the 8th seed, and that hasn't happened in the West in a long time.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a lot of talent leaving the West, going to the East last couple of years.
Yeah, a lot of players.
It's a lot easier to chase for a lot easier to get to the NBA Finals through the East than it is through the West. So talent has been slowly moving over to the East.
And the top 8 seeds in the East, they're all above 500. So it's nice to see that the East isn't that weak anymore. I mean, we still have that bias there and everything like that, but we have some pretty good teams in like the Washington Wizards, Chicago Bulls, Miami Heat, Atlanta Hawks aren't as good as they were last year, of course, but we also got the Cavaliers, right? So it's pretty nice to see that we have a pretty solid Eastern Conference this year.
Well, I think the other thing is it could be just literally Golden State, San Antonio, and OKC just beating the shit out of everybody in the West. So nobody else has a good.
That's true.
I think that could be another part of it.
Okay, so our next segment here, we're going to call this the trading post. And this is basically some rumors that have been going around the league and possible players that may be traded, may be dealt, and as a result, if they are dealt, we're going to talk about how they can how this will maybe impact their game on a future team, or a guy who is going to pick up their or fill their void once they leave a team. So, first guy we'll talk about is Tristan Thompson for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, Tristan Thompson's not going to get traded. They just signed a major deal with him. And actually, he's been starting most of the games in the past 10 or so games. This could be due to a matchup type of thing, but apparently there's reports that the Cavaliers have been shopping Mozgov, which kind of makes sense. The Cavaliers have a really, really deep front court, especially with Anderson Varejao. I don't see how they wouldn't get rid of him either. But it's a bit disappointing because Mozgov had a really good season last year, but he just hasn't shown us that this year. What do you think about the two players in Cleveland?
I think they're going to be holding the status quo. I don't think they're going to trade Mozgov. They know that he's important to winning a championship because they don't know who they're going to meet in the West. And they're not going to give up a big man, 7'1" Mozgov for nothing. So what are they going to get back for him? I don't think they really need another guard. They have Mo Williams. They address that. So I don't know if it's going to be a salary dump. LeBron James is going to be like, why are we doing a salary dump? We're trying to win a championship. Mm-hmm. We have this guy under contract. He's a big. If he faced Clippers or San Antonio in the finals, we're going to need him. So I think Mozgov will continue to rot on the bench, average 15 minutes. And that's going to hurt Tristan Thompson because he's not going to get the 30-plus minutes he needs to really be a double-double threat consistently. So, I think both people are going to stay. And, there's no trade value in Varejao. He's not going anywhere. LeBron loves him. He's his best friend. Next to Zagauskas, So he's gonna ride the bench and get a ring with LeBron. That's the hope.
Yeah. The Cavaliers, or LeBron James specifically, does enjoy playing with Mozgov as well too. He said he's the best big man he's played with since Big Z. But if they do end up shopping Mozgov, I think they're going to try to look for some more depth behind LeBron James, or maybe even someone to play behind Iman Shumpert as well too. Other than that, I don't really see any other voids they need to fill in their team.
Yeah, they could use a better small forward. I agree.
Sacramento Kings, Rudy Gay. Apparently the Kings are looking to shop Rudy Gay. Apparently there was a trade that was discussed between the Kings and the New Orleans Pelicans, involving Eric Gordon and Alonzo G. However, I don't think the Pelicans agreed to the deal. What do you think about this? Having Rudy Gay traded from the Kings.
Let's go back. The Kings right now sitting one game back of Utah for the 8th position. I guess it depends on what management's thinking. If management's trying to win now or position for next year, I get the feeling that if they're willing to move Rudy Gay, that for what involved Eric Gordon and Alonzo G, I don't have a lot of faith in Eric Gordon or Lonzo G, and the Kings have enough guards. So if they're thinking about trading Rudy Gay, I think they're looking to tank, and that doesn't bode well. But I don't think Rudy Gay is going to New Orleans, but he could get dealt somewhere. He can be dealt to a team that's looking to win now, and maybe he'll go to Cleveland. They need a small forward there.
I think that would be a
But
disastrous decision by Cleveland.
why? Because Rudy Gay can play some power forward. He can play some small forward. He can shoot some threes. Cleveland needs some people that can shoot threes.
He's too much of an
and athletic
player. You know, he doesn't play really well team basketball. But I really don't like the Kings shopping Rudy Gay. I think he's a really nice fit with the Kings. He gets along with Rajon Rondo. He gets along with DeMarcus Cousins, and that's the core of the team there. So I don't see why it doesn't really make sense for me, or to me, why they would want to make this kind of a trade.
It looks like a salary dump.
It does.
So maybe it's just a salary dump.
And with the with the Sacramento Kings management, you know, sometimes things don't make sense. We have Pau Gasol, who interestingly is on the trade radar. Apparently, the Chicago Bulls have been quietly shopping Pau around, and this was before Joakim Noah injured his shoulder. And this is a report by USA Today. Is this a surprise to you?
I was surprised. I thought they would be shopping Noah before Pau, but I guess the value on Noah was next to nil, so instead they decided to shop Pau instead. Because essentially they're the same player, with Pau being a lot better offensively. But in terms of there's the same big that passes very well, and you really didn't want two of them on the same contract. I think the Chicago owner wanted to save a little bit of money and trade one of them away.
And I was completely shocked by this as well too. I knew that they were trying to move Noah and Taj Gibson and free up some time for Bobby Portis, but yeah, them trading Pau Gasol is it's a huge surprise to me because he's doing so much for them defensively, offensively. He's grabbing boards, and I mean, between him and Jimmy Butler, who else is providing offense for them? It doesn't make sense to me why they would try to shop him. Like, who are they going to get back to fill his void? Then there's the Phoenix Suns, Markieff Morris. This guy's pretty much written in stone that he's going to be moved by the deadline. He is not getting along with management at all. Ever since they traded his brother Marcus to Detroit, there's no loyalty there. A lot of players have expressed that, even former players. There's no loyalty within the organization. So he doesn't want to play there anymore. And he's healthy, getting a lot of healthy DNPs, coach's decision. So he's definitely going to get traded somewhere. And ESPN is saying that Houston is a possible landing spot for him. They seem to be interested in him. And then also, the Cavaliers may be involved in a multi-team deal involving Markieff Morris as well too. So I think it would be really interesting that if Markieff Morris ended up on the Cavaliers, don't you think? Especially with the way that LeBron plays and his ability to bring out the best in his teammates. We can see like a Markieff Morris of the 2014.
I like him on Houston better, surprisingly. I like the fact that Terrence Jones has been awful. Montejunas has been injured. And they really want someone to stretch the floor to open up space for James Harden to cook, you know? I think he could do a lot more in Houston than in Cleveland. In Cleveland, he's just going to play backup to Kevin Love, and he's going to be of no value.
Yeah, definitely in a fantasy aspect, he's not going to be as nice of a pickup on the Cavaliers. But, I mean, for the Cavaliers as an organization, having him coming off the bench is pretty solid. But if he goes to Houston, I think he's gonna be back on the radar in terms of fantasy again, and he'll be a nice pickup. Which brings us to Houston. There's a couple of guys on Houston that may be moved by the trade deadline. One guy who I'm pretty positive is gonna get traded by the trade deadline is Ty Lawson. He has been a disaster from day one. It's not a good fit in Houston. They wanted to run the ball through him at first, but now that the ball's back into Harden's hands. If and when he does get traded, is this a player that you would keep an eye on and maybe stash?
I think if you think back a season or two, Ty Lawson was maybe a tier 2 point guard. He was actually drafted, 4th, 5th round. So, he could put it up. But ever since he got chased out of Denver, I believe, he hasn't been the same. I don't know where he's going to go. We discussed this earlier. I think there's a couple teams he could go. But overall, I don't see him getting a lot better unless he really lands in one or two specific spots where he can get the minutes, get the shots. And I think there's a stigma when you get caught with these DUIs over and over again that management just has no interest in bringing you on. It's bad for the organization. It's a headache in the media. It sends the wrong message about what your team represents.
Right.
So he might get chased out of the league. He might end up in China or Italy, to be honest.
But if he does get moved, I think he is worth a stash if you have the space for it, because honestly, how much worse can he possibly be than he is right now? He can put up numbers. He's either going to be just as bad as he already is, or there's only room to go up from there. Right? So I think it's if you can get him really, really cheap, I would stash him just to see. We also have Dwight Howard on the Houston Rockets, who interestingly, the team may want to shop him around, and the main reason is because of his expensive contract. Without Dwight Howard, they can easily be one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and it's basically just because of him that they're not doing as bad as they should. Without him, their offense would be so trash. The thing is, if Dwight opts out of his deal in the summer, which he's likely to do, he's unlikely to sign a cheaper deal with the Houston Rockets in order to help them assist with getting more players. And I think that's just based on his personality, especially you see in the Lakers when he came from Orlando. He's not really a team player, So I think he's going to be putting himself first, of course. And for the Rockets, it could be in their best interest to deal him and maybe get somebody out of it. But for Dwight Howard, it's going to be tough for where he goes. Do you think a Dwight Howard move is going to be made? And if they do move him, do you have any idea where a good place for him to land would be?
I don't think they would trade him now because they're chasing the ring. What are they right now? Houston's sitting 21-20. They finally turned their season around. They're starting to win. I think in the summer is when they might choose to deal Dwight after they lose or they win.
That's assuming he.
But I don't think midseason they're going to do it.
That's assuming he doesn't opt out. If he opts out of his contract, he can walk for free. And they can get nothing back out of it, right?
I don't know who's going to make that deal with him. I don't think anyone's going to make a deal with Houston. They were going to do something they had to do a lot sooner. And I think they're willing to chase the championship. The West is kind of open. There's only 4 teams that are really scary, and everybody else is in between. I think they'd rather chase for the ring now, because last year they went to round 3, right? So how many times are you going to be able to do that? So I don't think Dwight's going anywhere. I wouldn't be too worried about it. It'll be something that happens in the summer.
There's a couple of places that people have speculated or theorized around. What would you think of a Dwight Howard deal involving Ryan Anderson and Omer Asik so he can play alongside Anthony Davis?
No.
Because
I
Ryan
don't think
Anderson
there's enough
also
space
has.
in the paint. And I
Well,
don't know why Houston would want Omar Asik back. They tried that once and it didn't work out and sent him packing.
well, he was playing really well in Houston until the arrival of Dwight Howard.
I don't think Asik is going to do enough for you to win a championship.
Right.
Ryan Anderson, sure, you get that stretch. I wouldn't say it's a terrible trade, but I don't think it's going to get you much closer to winning a championship than if you had Dwight Howard on your team.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're really that worried about the future of your franchise, I have concerns about Houston's management.
Yeah, I mean, Omer Asik hasn't been doing much in New Orleans as well. Uh, he can't play alongside Anthony Davis. Um, so if anything does happen, it makes sense for New Orleans to deal him. Um, but whether or not Houston can make that kind of a deal, who knows as well too, right?
And Asik just got a big fat contract as well, so
Right.
this it might not be a good time to
Yeah,
take him on.
it is a big contract as well, but for Houston, it's going to be cheaper than Dwight in the long run. There's also people speculating maybe a trade to the Bucks for Monroe and who's the other guy? Middleton. Um,
Oh shit,
this would be a really
that's a big
interesting.
deal.
Yeah, that's a really interesting trade there. The Bucks have been doing pretty well, haven't they? Are they in the
The Bucks
playoffs?
are no, they've tanked pretty hard. They're at 18 and 25 now.
Oh, really? Okay. So,
They're they're the third bottom team in the East,
right.
tied with Charlotte
So if
in wins, but they have more losses.
if if uh if the Bucks want to blow up their team right now, and they could, like, they had a really solid defensive team to begin with, and I think Monroe is one of the issues in terms of the defense. He was never a really good defender, even as a Piston. So adding Dwight Howard can get them back on track in terms of defense. Their offense is there. Um, and then with the Rockets team, who their defense is scattered already anyways, if they can add in a Monroe, who is going to be better offensively, and also maybe a guy like Chris Middleton, I think that would be a little bit interesting there. But that would help the Bucks a lot. The thing is that, like, there's not gonna be a lot of teams that are gonna be willing to take on Dwight Howard, or even if Dwight Howard is willing to go there and commit to re-signing. So that's one of the toughest parts about having a deal with Dwight Howard made. Another team that could possibly be in the mix as well too is the Brooklyn Nets, if they might deal Brook Lopez.
Oh yeah, they're awful, but didn't they just resign Brook Lopez as well to a nice juicy contract?
Right, so, but they're not doing that well. Houston's not doing that well, and I don't know, maybe that's
I
just a
think you have a
theory.
point. I think the owner is willing to blow it up because he has a huge luxury tax bill and the team is just god awful.
Right. um, but yeah, so we were talking about Ty Lawson and the how a lot of teams are actually looking for a point guard. Um, it's pretty high in demand now. So we talked about how Ty Lawson could move to another team and potentially prosper there. And then we also have a couple other point guards out there that could potentially be moved as well too. So we have Brandon Jennings, who everyone thought that he was going to get traded as soon as he comes back from his injury, but he's been playing really well, even with Reggie Jackson being obviously the main point guard on the team. Brandon Jennings is still putting up some solid numbers. And although the team wanted to get rid of him, Stan Van Gundy seems to want to keep Jennings. Do you think this was something that maybe he was talking about just to be politically correct or whatever, or do you think he actually sincerely wants Jennings to be there?
I think there's a 50-50 chance that he stays on. Detroit they're doing okay, but I think he's a big headache. He's inefficient. If they can flip him for something productive for a playoff run, I think they'll do it. But I think Stan Van Gundy would be just as happy to have him as a sixth man right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, the teams that are looking for point guards, we have 5 main teams really. The Utah Jazz, they don't really have anybody running their point guard really solidly. Brandon Jennings getting there, Ty Lawson getting there. I think that could, regardless of who goes there,
Utah has Trey Burke, right?
Yeah, but he's trash.
They drafted Trey Burke out of Michigan, and he's not bad.
He's not great.
His jumper needs a little work.
He's not great. He's had like 3 seasons to try to make a name for himself with plenty of run, plenty of opportunity, and it just doesn't seem like he's gonna be starting point guard quality or starting point guard worthy.
I don't know. It's a little unfair with the Utah team being so awful the last couple of years.
Well, you have Gordon Hayward now making the plays instead of Trey Burke, so.
Yes.
You have the Brooklyn Nets, who, of course, Jarrett Jack, he's out for the season. They're really in need for a point guard. Donald Sloan hasn't been too bad. He's putting up some pretty nice assist numbers. Almost had a triple-double, too. But I think they could really use a good level, a good tier 2 type point guard. Do you think Ty Lawson or Brandon Jennings would fit in well there? Or do you think it's one of those guys like Tony Roten or something that we've been talking about? Maybe George Hill.
I don't know. I don't know. With these bad teams, I have no idea where they're going to go. I think in most cases, they're just going to fire Sale anyways. And I don't think even they care what they get back.
Of course, Houston Rockets does need a point guard as well, especially if they're going to deal Ty Lawson. Or do you think they're going to maybe try to push for another stretch 4 or something like that and put Patrick Beverly back into the starting lineup?
I don't think they trust Beverly enough. Because he's more of a defensive point guard. Mm-hmm. They do want probably a better shooter. Patrick Beverly does hit threes, but he's not very efficient with the threes. I think if they can get a better shooting guard to put next to James Harden, even if it's a spot-up shooter, that would be better. Just have Beverly focus on playing defense on the elite point guards like Chris Paul.
How about in Phoenix? Phoenix is they lost Eric Bledsoe. They don't really have a good point guard there either, right? Or is there? They had Isaiah Thomas, who they traded away. Dragic got traded away, and then they had Bledsoe. I can't even think of the other guard that they have.
Lately, they had Ronnie Price for a bit, but he's injured. Mm-hmm. But they're pretty weak in the guard position right now. But I don't think they're going to make a playoff push at 13-28. Mm-hmm. So I think they're pretty happy just letting the season slowly die rather than trade for a Ty Lawson. That's kind of a cancer.
Well, if they're going to trade
really affect the growth of their young players.
What if they're going to trade Markieff Morris anyways?
But do you really want someone like Jennings and Ty Lawson with a bad attitude affecting the young players on your team?
That's true.
And are they going to actually get you more wins? You win 3 more games this year, but you're still awful. What's the point? You're better off just trading Markieff for draft picks.
How about the New York Knicks? I mean, the New York Knicks have Jose Calderon, basically, who we know as Toronto Toronto Raptors, he's an okay point guard. Shitty defense, plays really safe, but he hasn't really been much of himself since he left the Raptors. So I mean, they could use a pretty good. They could use a point guard. Do you think they're gonna try to make a push for anyone?
I think New York is sitting outside the playoff picture, but I think they want to be in. I think they have the money. I believe, and I hope Phil Jackson finally does something useful for them. He's getting a ton of money to do not very much, so he should. Because Jeremy Grant isn't progressing as fast as they'd like. He's barely getting any minutes now. Mm-hmm. Calderon, again, he's aged, he's injured, he's a backup. He shouldn't be starting for a playoff team. As much as I love Calderon from the Raptors days.
I never liked him.
Yeah, I think the Zen Master can maybe turn Brandon Jennings and Ty Lawson into actually gold nuggets, maybe. I don't know. Maybe Phil can still do it.
I actually think Brandon Jennings would be an interesting fit in the New York Knicks alongside Kristaps Porzingis. I think that would be an exciting team to watch, especially with the New York style, where they're really offensive mindseted. So, yeah, I think Jennings would be a pretty nice fit there. Exciting to watch. But yeah, those are basically what's pretty much on the radar right now. As we get closer to the trade deadline, there's going to be a lot more rumors, a lot more people talking about different trades and everything like that. Yeah, we can see some more guys in discussions, maybe some more Ryan Anderson trades and stuff. But we'll find more out in a week or so. Last thing before we go, again, the All-Star game is coming up. If you haven't yet, do go onto the NBA website, vote for Kyle Lowry, vote for DeMar DeRozan, get them into the All-Star game, help them represent Toronto. We need to get them to the All-Star game, guys, so just go and do that. You can do it once per day. So I think Lowry is in the top 3 votes for the guard position, and I think DeMar is in the top 6. So yeah, let's try to get them up there. I mean, if Jeremy Lin is in the top 10 guards in the East to get voted in there, I don't see why we can't get these 2 guys on. Okay, I don't know why Jeremy Lin has so many votes.
Well, let's get them to be starters. Most likely they'll be coaches' picks, but let's try to get them starters to represent Toronto, Canada, and the Raptors.
Yeah, we need them to rep the city. So yeah, that's basically it. If you guys want to watch our first episode or the first part of this podcast, you can click probably somewhere down here or maybe to the left over here. I don't know. I haven't decided where I'm going to put it yet, but you can click on that link. You can watch our part 1 of this episode, and that's going to talk more about the hard facts and everything, the stats, players that you want to put into your lineup, injuries, those kind of things if you're really into the nitty-gritty of fantasy basketball. So yeah, that's pretty much it for today, and if you enjoyed what we're doing, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see us do more of, and smash the thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, and until then, see you guys next week. Peace out.